I think it's a relationship in which both parties get something out of it. So if you think about it in human terms, there are very few of us that would stay in a relationship of any sort if it wasn't mutually beneficial. So for us, a lot of the time, the best relationships we see between brands and people are where the people themselves feel listened to, and it's understood what they need and what the brand can realistically and feasibly and sort of legitimately add to their lives.
The goal of either maintaining a good relationship or moving people towards a better one there is an aspect of customer loyalty here. It's whenever they're in that particular mindset, that particular category, which brand occupies a particular relationship space where they're going to be more likely to choose that brand than another brand. And that does change sector by sector. I think people have a framework whereby they don't want to put too much thought into what they're going to get. And then if you can get a brand to occupy a relationship sense, which is just a default as opposed to necessarily one of high energy, high investment, a bit like an affair, that's not what many people want in their day-to-day lives. They might want something a little bit more humdrum.
I think the ideal relationship is based on trust, in the sense that the brand will deliver on a promise. So it'll promise to do something and then it lives up to it and I'm not disappointed. So for example, if I buy tickets to go and see the Wimbledon, the tennis at Wimbledon, and I pitch up at centre court for the final and I can't get in, then there's a clear kind of brand promise breakdown, which is going to entirely change my relationship with Wimbledon from there on. And what was a sort of a brand that held a place in my heart has suddenly kind of collapsed somewhat. So I think it's about that consistency, it's about living up to expectations, it's about delivering on a promise.
People get their sense of the relationship they're in by the behaviours and by the interactions of a particular brand. So interest is less about what you're saying and it's much more about how you're saying it, how you're saying it throughout the day, what's the cadence of the way you're saying it, what behaviours do you engage with, and those are the things which change the relationship. So less thought possibly on what's the idea look like and more about how does the idea behave.
I think it's all about changing brand behaviour. So advertising is excellent at doing what it does and it can create emotional connections, but in the end, consumers' experience of a brand is all about how a brand behaves when they interact with it. And so just kind of talking about trying to create an emotional connection with a brand by advertising isn't enough if my experience of that brand when I try to interact with it is subsequently something that either disappoints me or lets me down. So I think thinking about what the most appropriate pattern of communication is, what's the most appropriate tone of voice, understanding that relationship in human terms so that the brand can behave appropriately is a way that we can start to create relationships that feel much more productive and sensible in the real world.
I think it's through consistency, or to be very old-fashioned about it, I think sometimes simply the quality of the product can make a difference. So if you take, for example, the brand journey that Skoda, the car manufacturer, has been on in the past generation. I mean, Skoda used to be the butt of jokes. The joke about Skoda would be, how do you double the value of a Skoda? You fill up the petrol tank. Now, today, Skoda wins lots of awards for lots of different cars in its range. How has it done that? Well, it was partly the acquisition by Volkswagen which changed it. But generally just the quality of the product has increased, and I think we can't forget the fact that product quality will still be the major factor in influencing people about the brands.